It will be the hardest thing you'll ever do. You'll doubt yourself a lot, but make sure you're around people who believe in you.
Anything professional is going to be ridiculously challenging.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of Next Level University, where we teach you how to level up your life, your love, your health, and your wealth. We hope you enjoyed our latest episode where we talked about why everybody supports you in the beginning of your journey. Today, for episode number 535, we are going to teach you the one thing that you must understand before you start your journey. So, if you guys listen to our episode where we were on with our coach and mentor and friend now, David Meltzer.
Uncle Dave.
You heard him say that when it comes to the podcast game, the David Meltzers, the Tom Bilyeu's, the Joe Rogans, the Ed Milet's are the 1% of the 1%. I think at the end of the day, the not number one thing, but the one thing you have to know when you start your journey is where you actually want to go. Also, part two of that, you have to understand what it's actually going to take of you.
Right.
So today we're going to talk a little bit about that because from talking to podcasters, entrepreneurs, I think a lot of people have a goal that they haven't reverse engineered, so they don't understand what it's going to take. Or the total opposite, they've set a goal, of something very small compared to what they're actually capable of.
Right. So
it's important to figure out what it is. Just start talking. I'm going to take care of your microphone.
What's going on with my mic?
It's going to Jeff if you start.
Okay. So for those of you out there listening right now, I think it's important to start with this. So Kev told me earlier that someone had reached out and basically said that we love your podcast because it's very heart-driven, but it's also no BS. And I think what that person was really trying to articulate is that we care so deeply that we're willing to tell you the truth.
Oh, yeah.
Even though it's a truth you probably don't want to hear. And that's what this episode is definitely going to be. When David Meltzer said, basically the context of this conversation started, if you didn't listen to that episode, I asked Dave, I don't believe, basically we help podcasters start, grow, monetize their shows. That's great. I said, I can kind of tell when I'm coaching someone whether or not they really want it bad enough to where they're actually going to be able to succeed. And what he said is what you should do right out of the gate. And I actually do this. When I jump on the phone, one of the first questions I ask people is, does your podcast exist in 10 years? Does your business exist in 10 years? Where do you want to be in 10 years? And if they struggle to answer that question, that's okay. But at least now I understand how much clarity or lack thereof do they actually have. And so what Dave basically said is that, oh my God, I just threw my coffee across the room and it actually didn't spill
into my
shoes. At all. Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
What was that about?
It just slipped out of my hand.
For those of you listening, Alan just football threw his coffee into my shoes for some strange reason.
So what basically Dave said is that, listen, the podcast game is for the 1% of the 1%, like Kevin mentioned. And to be honest, there's something called the survival bias that you've probably heard me talk about on this show. We tend to hear about the people that make it. So imagine, a Taylor Swift, okay? This is one industry, right? So country music, she is 1% of the 1% of the 1%. What does that actually mean? That means that you're 1 in 100,000. So 1% of 1% is 1 in 1,000. 1% of 1% of 1% is 1 in 1,000,000 or 1 in 100,000.
You're looking at the wrong guy.
Okay.
How would
but
we
either
know?
way,
Should I
it's
ask
a
Siri?
very let's do that. I would love to.
Hey Siri, what's 1% of 1% of 1%? She's thinking.
Okay, I found this on the web for what's 1% of 1% of 1%. Check it out.
I don't know.
1 in 1,000,000.
I don't know that it'll say. Let's see. What is 1% of 1%? Yeah, it's not going to say in terms of...
Here, do this. Do 100,000.
Please hold. Okay.
Times 0.001.
100,000 times 0.001. 100.
Okay. So that's 1 in 10,000 then. Okay.
Math, Jeff.
So 1 in 10,000. So Taylor Swift is 1 out of every 10,000 country singers. And honestly, it might even be more than that. So the point I'm trying to make here about the survival bias, though, is that we're seeing on the media the people that made it. You're not seeing the actors and actresses and the singers and stuff that didn't make it. Why? Because they didn't make it, right? So it's really important to understand that while having big dreams is huge, and I think that not trying is the worst thing ever, you also have to understand what game you're really playing, and I think that's what Kevin and I want to bring you today.
It's interesting because, I mean, let's be real. One of the reasons people start something is because they see somebody that inspires them.
Right.
Right? So if you watch us, then you might say, oh, you know what? I want to start a podcast to end up where they are. Can you? Sure.
Right.
Sure. So we just crossed 326,000 downloads. I didn't do the numbers today, so I'm sure it's higher now. But the most people don't even get there.
Right.
Like Dave said, 99% of podcasts have less than 100 downloads.
Mm-hmm.
But you're listening to us because we have more, right? Like it's this weird thing of if you're inspired by what somebody does, you're inspired by the level of success that you might not even want.
Right.
Now,
well, you might not want what comes with it.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
And can you get it? Sure. But like, I think for me, I just want to pull back the curtain a little bit on how strategic we are.
So I was on the phone with Brandon last night. And
Shout out to Brandon.
Yeah, on the NLU team. Shout out Brandon. So he literally said verbatim, it's just so awesome to see what's behind the scenes, but honestly, it's so overwhelming. And what I told him was basically just to provide some context. What we were doing is we were crafting our statements of value to create emails to send to Tier 1 guests. So Kevin and I jump in front of the mics and say, hey, Gary V, my name's Kevin, my name's Alan. We'd love to have you on the show. Your work has changed our life, that kind of stuff. And we give them a compelling reason to come as a guest on our show. We're going to start sending those emails. Brandon's going to help us do that. So there's some context. So he wants to start a podcast at some point. I don't know when he's doing that, but he's going to. And what he said is it's really overwhelming to see how the behind the scenes. What I think is interesting, and I told him, I said, you're in the right place because you're literally working with people that, and I told him this, I said, we've worked with a lot of podcasters. Very few people take it as seriously as we do. And I don't want anyone listening to think that this is an ego flare or us being arrogant. I sincerely mean what I'm about to say. Out of the hundreds of podcasters we've studied, helped, learned from, met, all that, I do believe that we take actual podcasting more seriously than 99% of them. And I think that it's important for anyone out there to understand that if you do, there's a big difference between having a podcast and having a successful podcast. There's a big difference between being an entrepreneur and being a successful entrepreneur. And I just think that what's most important that I want to get across to everybody is if you want to do professional anything, if you want to be a speaker, that's a big difference between a professional speaker. If you want to do a professional anything, professional bodybuilding show, professional skater, professional podcaster, professional speaker, professional anything, it's going to be anything professional is going to be ridiculously challenging.
I was on the phone today with one of our clients, one of our NLPS clients, Next Level Podcast Solutions, and we were chatting about basically, what did I say? I basically said, for where you are, like you have a top podcast in your country, right? You have a top 50 podcast in your country. That is really good.
Right.
Like that is really good, especially for the amount of effort that I know you've put in. It's almost, I said, like, you're actually further along than you should be in a weird way.
Yeah.
And he said, honestly, I'm so grateful you're like telling me the hard truth because that's what I need to hear. And it was like, this is what your action plan is. If you want, you've probably gotten 50% of the results from your podcast with like 30% effort, 40% effort. I said, if you really want to scale and grow this thing in 2021, you need 100% effort. You need 100% effort. That's the reason that we're growing at the rate we are. And again, you know, there's still a ton of shows out there that are way bigger and have more listens, but where we haven't done it for as long.
Right.
Right? We're 3.5, 4 years into this actual podcast journey, maybe a year of doing it right.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. That's the other thing. Would any of those conversations, would any of the strategies, would any of the things that we've learned actually have happened if we didn't already decide, I want to have at least 500 million downloads.
Right.
At least. Like that's the minimum. Lewis Howes has 500 million. I don't see why we can't.
Right.
Right? Joe Rogan has billions at this point. So that's what we decided. But it's almost like, okay, if I came to you And guys, this is going to be a little bit hardcore, but I think it's important. I think it's important. I don't know what it would take to be the best basketball player, football player, any of that. But if I came to you and said, hey, Alan, I want to start a show. I want to have 500 million downloads. I want to make $1 million gross revenue a year. What should I expect? What can I expect from this journey?
The first thing I would say is you're going to have to work probably. I'm grateful for the question. I would say first and foremost, you're going to have to. This is what I would recommend. Can I just say that? This is what I would recommend. Yeah. I would recommend working 6 days a week. I would recommend creating a give up list of almost everything outside of podcasting. I would check in with how bad you want those results. I would check in with your business acumen. Have you ever run a business before? First, I would just ask questions. Yeah. Okay, can we do it?
Sure.
Okay. Have you ever run a successful business before?
No.
Okay. Have you ever run a successful podcast before?
I have.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay, do you have a podcast mentor?
Yes.
Who's far ahead of you?
Yes.
By like a decade?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, luckily, Uncle Dave.
Awesome. Are you want to gross $1 million a year? What are you going to provide? I guess, how are you going to get that revenue?
Right. For us, it would be coaching, speaking. Honestly, there's a lot of online courses that we're creating. Yeah.
Okay.
But again, honestly, don't even take my answers because I'm 3.5, 4 years in. For most of these people, it would have been no. I probably don't have a mentor that's 10 years ahead, unless you've hired somebody. Mm-hmm. Right. So like, what are your answers to your respective thing? It doesn't have to be podcasting. That's just what we know better than other things.
From 0 to 10, how badly do you want to achieve your dream?
Well, for me, that's a 10.
Okay. From 0 to 10, how much are you willing to do whatever it takes to achieve it?
10.
Okay. Do you believe that you have the right people in your life that are very success-oriented that will help you become better?
I do, yeah.
Okay. I guess, how much of your time, conscious energy, how often do you think about podcasting?
All day, every day, basically.
Perfect. Okay, so this is, again, interesting because I would actually consider you someone who will succeed. Obviously, I do, right? But understand that if your answers were not similar to Kevin's about your specific thing, like the 1% of the 1%, Kevin and I genuinely could spend the rest of our life trying to be the most successful podcast in terms of positive impact in the world, and we could spend the rest of our life working towards that goal and still never achieve it. Do you want it that bad? And if not, that's okay. It's just understanding that in the beginning so that you don't constantly you don't design a life where maybe you don't want to work 10 hours a day, 6 days a week. If you don't, that's fine, but understand that maybe. And now here's the interesting thing. In 10 years from now, Kevin and I probably could have. Okay, here's where we'll go. Joe Rogan has been podcasting for how many years?
Probably 12 or 13.
12 or 13 years. Okay. Now, if you listen to Joe Rogan's show and you see his life now, you might think that's amazing. Now he probably can work 4 or 5 hours a week and still be a very, very, very successful tier 1 podcast. But that's because he grinded for a decade. Mm. And I just want everyone out there listening to understand that you're seeing people at the tail end of the bow tie. And for those of you who don't know what the bow tie is, I'll mention it briefly here, and then I'll kick this over to Kev.
I don't have to talk.
No, I think it's important that you do. But for those of you who don't know what the bow tie is, what you need to understand is that the compound effect, you're seeing people who survived long enough, who did it long enough to break through the fray. There's probably, how many podcasts exist that our listeners don't know exist?
That our listeners don't know exist?
Yeah.
1.5 million.
Yeah. Okay, so if you're out there listening right now and you want to start a podcast, let's say, there's 1.5 million other podcasters that you don't know exist. You know probably Lewis Howes, you probably know Joe Rogan, you probably know Ed Milet, you probably know David Meltzer because you listen to the show. But there's 1.5 million other podcasters in the world right now that you have no clue exist. I want you to realize that you're at the very beginning of our journey if you listen to us now. Eventually, when the world knows Next Level University, like Joe Rogan Experience, it's not the right person to fully learn from. I think you can get in our orbit and you can learn from us and you can definitely get a lot of value. But what I want you to understand is that the only way you're going to learn the truth is if you talk to us directly.
Right.
Rather than, like, if you look at Joe Rogan on YouTube right now, you're not going to learn how to become a successful podcaster. He almost didn't, he got in the industry very early and he was just the most consistent and he had really good guests and really good content. He did the fundamentals longer than anyone else.
And he was Joe Rogan.
And he was Joe Rogan
that's
already. Exactly. So you're missing the whole story. And I just think it's really important for you to understand the bow tie. So again, at the beginning of any journey, you can expect level 10 effort for 0 results. Very, very little results. Okay? Eventually what happens is it's 9 and 1. Then it's 8 and 2. Then it's 7 and 3. So a level 7 effort for level 3 results. Eventually it's 6 and 4, and then eventually it's 5 and 5. That's where you're at the center of the bow tie and it shifts. That's where your level 5 effort creates level 5 results. Okay? It switches eventually. Now it's 6 and 4 the other way. Level 4 effort for 6 results. Level 5 effort, level 7 effort or level 3 effort for 7 results. And it switches. Eventually, and I want you to really think about this, eventually it's 0 and 10. Joe Rogan could literally stop podcasting today, and he could still have more downloads than us for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
And he could never podcast again for the rest of his life. That is the power of the compound effect. Just understand that if you want something bad enough, you got to play for the long run, and you can't learn from people who are playing a short-term game.
Yeah, I think that's honestly beautifully said. I think it's just interesting because you don't really ever see the behind the scenes. Because the problem is it's hard to capture the behind the scenes and do what's necessary behind the scenes. You know, like I would love to show everything that happens throughout the day, but a lot of it is just like it's not sexy and it's not. You don't want to see me foam rolling at 4 a.m. Like it's not going to do anything for you, or tracking the listens, or it's just not going to do anything. Right. The whole point of this episode, and as always, we always say this when we do like hardcore episodes or more hardcore. I don't want you to take this in any way to stop you from trying.
Right.
I want you to understand that it's very hard to win at a 10 out of 10 level if you are not putting 10 out of 10 effort in for the whole time.
Yeah.
It's
for a long time.
There's a reason honestly, there's a reason why I don't really rap as much anymore. There's a reason I don't box as much anymore. I actually broke the bag at my gym. I broke it, so they're gonna have to fix that. But
wow,
yeah, it's, I got a Hadouken leg kicks. This is my life, and that's what I always tell people is like, don't ever compare your results to ours. This is my job.
Right.
I don't have a job. This is
Right.
my job. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a speaker. I'm a podcast coach. That's what I do.
Right.
So you can't compare your podcast to ours.
This is our entire life. Both of us.
Yeah, and we planted our flag.
Right.
We planted our flag. Like that's this. I don't think I've ever told this story before. I don't think I've ever told this story. What Taryn and I went to. This was pre-COVID, right before COVID. Taryn and I went to New York to see Simon Sinek, and I asked Simon Sinek a question. I said, Simon, what advice would you give to people, 20 years earlier, like 20 years younger than you in their journey? And he wasn't super nice about it. I think he probably is sick of getting that question, and I could have framed it more. But he basically said, like, number one, you don't want what I have because the amount of work it is sickening, and like the fact that you need to have a deeper purpose, a deeper passion, a deeper, like, I want to be better than him. I want to be better than the guy who called me out in front of 500 people. Literally, he did. He kind of like called me out and said like, well, the fact that you're asking is kind of like, I don't remember exactly how I put it. And Taryn was so sad. She was like, oh, what a dick.
Right.
And honestly, but the thing is, I didn't frame the question very well. I think if I framed it as, hey, Simon, other than having next level mentors like David Meltzer and Evan Carmichael and having 500 episodes of this podcast and having an LLC and a speaking career, what else would you do? But That's me asking a question to somebody that I hoped would give me some of the answers. And he didn't. He actually gave me the opposite. Like if I wasn't me and I was somebody else, I might have quit. Because Simon Sinek said he didn't give me the truth.
I know.
He didn't give me the truth. Right? And that's one thing that Gary Vee, I really look up to Gary for that, because he gives you the truth of like, look, okay, this is you want to be successful? Grind for 12 years, and obviously make sure you're sleeping, but grind for 12 years until people know who you are.
Right.
And one of the reasons that we're talking about this is because we saw somebody's Instagram profile, and this person, and we'll keep it anonymous, obviously, because I don't want to shout anybody out or call anybody out, but literally said, most entrepreneurs think that you have to work hard. That was the title of her Instagram video. And in the video, she literally said, well, on Monday, obviously I work. And she wouldn't say hard because she knew it would be misleading. And she literally backtracked.
Yep.
It's not easy.
I care about the listeners enough to tell them this. People who make it seem easier than it really is are people who are willing to, they're lowering the intimidation factor so that they can sell you on a program. This is a thing, okay? If Kevin and I really, really, really wanted you to work with us at Next Level Podcast Solutions, we could lie to you and say this is easy and then sign more people up. Instead of telling you the truth, which is that this is actually really, really hard, even with our help, it's going to take a lot. And we will not do that. And this person literally said the people who think entrepreneurship is hard are crazy. And it's like I had to turn it off. It got me vehemently frustrated, because if you are out there right now and you think being an entrepreneur is easy, you are in for a rude fucking awakening. Pardon my French. It is the hardest thing I've ever done, hands down. And I've cried countless times trying to explain to people who aren't entrepreneurs. Like, I remember one time I asked, like, have you ever started a business? Like, it's very, very difficult. Now, I encourage it.
Oh, for sure.
I encourage it because it's a great self-discovery journey. I would argue that entrepreneurship, whether it's podcasting or anything you want to do, any form of starting a business, I believe is genuinely the best self-discovery journey you can ever embark on, except for an intimate relationship. I think this business partnership that we have has helped me learn more about myself than anything else, except for my relationship with Emilia. And I think those two journeys take the most courage: intimate relationship and business. They're, Tony Robbins says you're a gladiator if you're in business. It's the only place where the longer you survive, the more likely you die. And so, again, Kevin and I want you all to achieve your dreams, but we also want you to understand what comes with that. If you want to be a Brené Brown, awesome. Hell yeah, I'm all for it. Let me help you do that. But trust me, you will have to grind. You will have to face your truth. You will have to be vulnerable. You will have to have courage. You will have to fail forward for years, maybe decades, to come even close. And I just won't. I care enough to tell you the truth, and so does Kevin. And I think that's really important.
Yeah. Yeah. I always tell people, and we'll go after this, I always tell people starting a show is easy. It's very easy. You can hop on the phone and I can do it for you in an hour. But it's the consistency, the commitment, the resilience, the coming up with topics, the becoming a better speaker, all of that stuff. It's the most fulfilling thing I've ever done in my life, and it's amazing, and I'm so happy that we're where we're at. But, 535 episodes in, that's a lot. Like, there's a lot of things that have happened behind the scenes. And the one thing that I've always said, and I've said this since the beginning, and I love the fact that it's this way, we want to take you on the journey with us. Mm-hmm. I don't want you to see us when we have 50 million downloads and then say, I could never be that. Like, if you guys are doing this with us, we're going to talk to you about what we're going through. And I think that a lot of people lose touch with that. When you're the best in the world at something, it's like a Lewis Howes. I don't know how often he does vulnerable episodes about his struggles. Because I don't know that that's what people want from him anymore.
Right.
That's what we want to be.
What would you, if Kevin, before starting this show, had a dream, and you were talking to Kevin, and this Kevin was really going to hear what you were going to say. He was actually going to understand it, okay? So let's presuppose Kevin was going to be able to understand what you're about to say. What is the vulnerable truth that you would give him to help him in advance embark on a more successful, more aligned journey?
Honestly, it has to be one of the only things. It has to, like, I have the podcast, I have Taryn, I have my family. Like, that's it. I traded everything in for this. So maybe you don't have to do it the same way I did it, but you're going to have to give it at least the same amount of effort that we've given it, right? Like, I would literally say, if you want 100% results, you have to put in 300% effort for years. And I don't know that there's any other way other than by buying followers and buying listens and likes. And that's not the game that we're playing. I think it's almost like a bodybuilding show. I could never explain how difficult that is. If you're a woman listening to this, try to explain giving birth. I can't fathom that.
Right.
I don't know what that's like at all. I've heard stories. My mom always tells me I was a terrible birth or whatever. You know, she always jokes about it.
Yeah.
I don't know what that's like. I would literally say it will be the hardest thing you'll ever do. You'll doubt yourself a lot, but make sure you're around people who believe in you. And honestly, you have to keep showing up and keep getting better every single day, no matter what, if you want to be the best in the world. And understand that there are only 50 people where you want to go, you know, or
out of 7.5
or 100
billion.
people, whatever the number is. There's an astronomically low chance that you get there. Now, I do think we'll get there because I think we'll work hard enough and long enough and smart enough to do it. But the odds are minuscule that we are the top of the top, you know, and I don't know. I would do it anyway because I love it for sure. And I want you guys to do it too.
Yeah.
And maybe you don't want what we want. Maybe you don't want 500 million downloads. You don't want to be making, you know, speeches across the world. Like, maybe that's not what you want.
Right.
But understand that if you've never done it, you might not understand how difficult it's going to be.
Right.
I think that's the important part.
And at least try, otherwise you'll have what if.
Yeah.
So give it a shot. If you fall in love with it, then, you know, plant your flag like we have. If you don't, just trust me, if you don't really love it and really want it, find something you really do.
You got to love it.
You got to love it.
Ladies and gentlemen, we talked a lot about podcasting. If in 2021 you want to start your show or you want to grow your show or monetize it, scale it, get better guests, all of that stuff, Alan and I have Next Level Podcast Solutions. No matter where you are in your podcast journey, there is a next level. Shout out to Amy and Charisse, two of our new clients. And also, Alan and I have done 43 weeks, I think, 42 weeks of live masterminds. Okay? We have really, really been practicing our speaking. If you are looking for two enthusiastic, passionate speakers, we would absolutely love to virtually speak at your school, at your company, whatever it is, in your group of coaches, whatever it is. We've been practicing an awful lot, and we would absolutely love to bring that to you.
If you're a raving fan listener of this show, Kevin and I would love to speak at your school, your company. Here's the 4 buckets: middle schools, high schools, colleges, companies. If you're a raving fan listener of this show and you've left us a review, we will literally come and speak pro bono for the first one.
Family.
For the first
We
one.
don't have fans, Alan.
We have family.
We have family.
Yes. And so please reach out. I know that Johanna, shout out to Johanna. I just spoke to her athletes recently. It's something we want to do more of. We want to give back. And reach out.
Yes, and every Monday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Next Level Masterminds. As always, we don't have fans, we have family. Up next, we have an episode with Mike Diamond, a good friend of Dave Meltzer. We've seen him on Office Hours many times. We've been super excited to chat with him. We hope you will enjoy. We'll talk to you on the next one.
Talk to you soon.